chosen ones, the betrayal didn't arrive with a thunderclap or the dramatic flourish of a villain revealed. It seeped in, an insidious toxin administered by a hand you trusted, by a voice that had once been a lullaby, by eyes that had offered a sanctuary. The moment of realization wasn't a singular flash, but a slow, agonizing dawn where the shadows retreated not to reveal light, but a landscape twisted beyond recognition. And with that dawning, something fundamental shifted deep within you, not in your beliefs alone, but in the very machinery of your being. This wasn't merely emotional pain. It was a profound, somatic shock, a biological assault that sent reverberations through every nerve ending, every muscle fiber, every synapse. Your body, the vessel of your consciousness, became a war zone, the battle waged not against an external enemy, but against the very fabric of your internal equilibrium. The first sensation was often a constriction, a profound tightening that seized your chest with the immediacy of a physical blow. It wasn't just a metaphor for a broken heart. It was a visceral, suffocating reality. Imagine a blacksmith's vise clamping down on your sternum, slowly, relentlessly, pressing the air from your lungs, leaving them starved for oxygen, yet unable to fully expand. Your diaphragm, that essential muscle of respiration, would lock, stiff and unyielding, transforming each breath into a shallow, desperate gasp. It felt as if an invisible hand had reached inside and cinched every sinew, every ligament around your heart, squeezing it, not to a stop, but to a frantic, stuttering rhythm that echoed the irregular drumming of a trapped bird. This wasn't anxiety that you could rationalize away with a calming technique. This was a physiological response so primal, so overwhelming, that it bypassed all conscious thought, demanding your immediate, undivided attention. The muscles across your shoulders would knot, forming rigid bands of tension that climbed your neck, creating a relentless ache that radiated into your jaw, sometimes even your teeth, as if your entire skeletal structure was attempting to brace against an invisible weight, a burden too immense to bear. This physical imprisonment was not confined to your upper torso. It cascaded through your abdomen, twisting your gut into a cold, hard knot. The familiar warmth of your core would vanish, replaced by an icy dread that seeped into your marrow. Your digestion would cease, a nauseous churning replacing the normal rhythm of life, as your body instinctively prepared for a fight or flight response that had nowhere to go, no clear enemy to confront, no escape route from the internal devastation. Every cell screamed a silent alarm, flooding your system with cortisol and adrenaline, hormones that, in a sustained assault, became toxic, corrosive agents, gnawing at your physical reserves, leaving you depleted and profoundly vulnerable. Your skin might feel clammy, or conversely, a strange heat might flush through you, an internal fever born of psychological torment. Your extremities could tingle or feel heavy, disconnected, as if the neural pathways were frayed, struggling to transmit coherent signals. Simultaneously, while your body was screaming its alarm, your mind would retreat behind a thick, impenetrable veil. This was the brain fog, a pervasive cognitive obscuration that made clarity an impossible luxury. It wasn't mere distraction or forgetfulness. It was as if a heavy, damp blanket had been thrown over your conscious thought processes, muffling every idea, every perception. Words, once clear and direct, became slippery, their meanings dissolving before they could fully form. Conversations would pass through you like whispers in a dense fog, their context lost, their implications opaque. You might hear the sounds, perceive the movements of others, but the ability to integrate that information, to construct a coherent narrative from it, would be severely compromised. It was like trying to navigate a familiar city through a dense blizzard, where landmarks were obscured, directions became meaningless, and every step felt uncertain, precarious. This mental opacity wasn't simply a lack of focus. It was a defensive mechanism, an internal shutdown designed to protect you from processing an unbearable truth. Your prefrontal cortex, the seat of reason and executive function, would struggle to assert itself, its normal operations overwhelmed by the amygdala's primal scream of danger. Simple tasks became Herculean efforts. Remembering what you had for breakfast, or even if you had breakfast, became a monumental challenge. The thread of thought, once a robust line, would fray and snap with disconcerting ease, leaving you adrift in a sea of half-formed ideas and phantom memories. You might find yourself staring blankly at a wall for minutes or hours, the passage of time becoming a distorted, meaningless concept, punctuated only by the painful tightening in your chest. The world outside would appear muted, distant, as if viewed through a dirty pane of glass. Colors might seem less vibrant, sounds less distinct, tastes less profound. This sensory dulling was another facet of the fog, your system prioritizing survival over engagement, withdrawing from external stimuli that might add to the overwhelming internal chaos. Yet paradoxically, you might become hyper-aware of specific, non-threatening details, the hum of the refrigerator, the pattern on the floor, the texture of your clothes as your brain desperately sought something, anything tangible and neutral to anchor itself to, away from the crushing reality of betrayal. This oscillation between dulling and hyperfocus left you profoundly disoriented, unable to trust your own perceptions, unable to find firm footing in a reality that felt increasingly fluid and hostile. The face, always the face, the familiar face. This was the silent, agonizing loop playing on the internal screen of your mind, projected onto the screen of your consciousness. The face that once represented safety, comfort, unwavering loyalty, now became a symbol of absolute treachery. The very neural pathways that had reinforced positive associations with that person, their smile, their laugh, the specific cadence of their voice, now short-circuited, sparking pain and confusion. It was a cognitive dissonance so profound that your brain struggled to reconcile the data points. The person you knew, the person you trusted, the person who inflicted this wound. The betrayal wasn't just an act, it was a fundamental reordering of your personal universe, and the brain fog was your mind's attempt to scramble the signals, to buy itself time to process the impossible. It was a form of self-preservation, however agonizing, however debilitating. You felt a terrifying disconnect, a sensation of floating above your own body, observing the suffering without being able to intervene, as if your soul had partially detached, unable to bear the full weight of the experience. The ground beneath your feet felt less solid, the air less nourishing, the future less certain. You were adrift in a storm born from within, a biological maelstrom triggered by the cruelest of human acts, the desecration of trust by someone held dear. This was the beginning of the journey, the initial trauma that marked your flesh, your spirit, your very understanding of reality. This indelible physical and mental imprint was the universe's way of etching into your being a profound lesson, a stark awakening to the depths of human darkness, and simultaneously to the immense capacity of your own spirit to endure. There is a peculiar weight that settles in the chest when the truth, uninvited and brutal, finally forces its way through the layers of hope and denial. It is not merely the weight of a shattered heart, but the crushing burden of a reality fundamentally altered. You sit now, perhaps, in the quiet aftermath, staring at an empty space that used to hold not just a person, but an entire universe. This is the grief of the empty chair, and it is unlike any other sorrow. It is a specific, insidious kind of mourning, chosen ones, one that often leaves you feeling isolated in your pain. Because how do you explain to the world that you are grieving not a death, not a separation, but an asterisk illusion asterisk? How do you articulate the devastating emptiness left by someone who was never truly there in the way you believed them to be, in the way they expertly presented themselves? It is a loss without a tangible body, a wound without a visible scar, a ghost in the very fabric of your past that now demands recognition. The chair is empty, not because they moved on, but because the person you thought occupied it never truly existed. You poured your genuine self, your sacred trust, your deepest vulnerabilities into a vessel that, in hindsight, was either empty or filled with something entirely different from what you perceived. You invested years, sometimes decades, not just of time, but of the most precious resource you possess, your authentic energy, your soul's earnest desire for true connection. And now, the revelation hits like a physical blow. It was all a mirage. This isn't merely a broken relationship. It's a shattered narrative. The shared dreams, the whispered promises, the intricate tapestry of a future you believed was being woven together, all of it dissolves into mist. You are left with the agonizing task of dismantling an entire universe you built around a foundation of smoke. Every memory is now tainted, re-evaluated through the lens of betrayal, every affectionate gesture replayed as a calculated maneuver. The laughter you cherished now echoes with an unsettling hollowness. The comfort you felt now feels like a cruel deception. The chair is empty, and it stands as a monument to what never truly was. It represents the absence of reciprocity, the void where genuine understanding should have resided, the silence where true empathy was promised but never delivered. You mourn the loss of a relationship that existed only in your heart, nurtured by your unwavering belief and your capacity for unconditional love. You grieve the death of a potential, the demise of a future that felt so real, so tangible, and now crumbles into dust at your feet. This specific grief is compounded by the profound sense of foolishness, the self-blame that gnaws at the edges of your sanity. How could you have been so blind? How could you have invested so much in a phantom? These questions, relentless and unforgiving, echo in the silence of the empty chair, amplifying the pain. You feel not only the sting of betrayal from another, but the perceived betrayal of yourself, of your own judgment, of your innate ability to discern truth. But understand this, chosen ones, your capacity for belief, your willingness to love deeply, your profound openness to connection, these are not weaknesses. They are the very essence of your mark, the divine signature that sets you apart. It is precisely because you possess such a vast reservoir of genuine emotion, such an unshakable faith in the good within others, that these illusions could take root and flourish. The architect of the illusion preyed on your light, not your darkness. They saw your depth and sought to reflect it back to you, distorted, so that you would project your own truth onto their empty canvas. The pain you feel is real, profoundly real. It is a pain that others, unfamiliar with this unique betrayal, might dismiss as just a breakup or getting over someone. They do not comprehend the existential wound of having to rewrite your own history, to erase entire chapters of your life that you believed were shared, only to discover you were writing a solo act all along, with a deceptive shadow as your co-star. This is the agony of confronting not just a lost love, but a lost self, the self that believed, the self that trusted, the self that was woven into a false tapestry. The empty chair is a stark reminder of the energy you poured into a black hole, the emotional capital you invested in a counterfeit currency. It's the phantom limb pain of a connection that felt as real as bone and sinew, yet was ultimately an elaborate fabrication. You are grieving not just a person, but the loss of your own perceived reality, the shattering of a fundamental trust in your own intuitive compass. And that is a grief that cuts deeper than most can ever imagine. It leaves you wary, guarded, questioning everything. The world suddenly feels less solid, less predictable. You are left with the daunting task of piecing together a new understanding of your own past, reevaluating every interaction, every shared moment, through the lens of newly acquired, brutal clarity. This is the crucible of the empty chair, chosen ones. It is a lonely, desolate place where the echoes of what never was reverberate, and the silence of what should have been screams the loudest. Your pain is valid, your struggle is profound, and your journey through this particular valley of shadows is an integral part of understanding the unique mark you bear. Many of you, as marked by a higher power, carry an innate burden of empathy, a profound desire for peace, and a spiritual inclination towards mercy. This deep-seated wiring, a testament to the divine touch within you, can paradoxically become a vulnerability if not coupled with potent wisdom and robust self-preservation. We speak now of a treacherous spiritual quicksand, a trap often laid by well-meaning but incomplete spiritual doctrines, The danger of premature forgiveness. It sounds counterintuitive, doesn't it? Forgiveness, we are taught, is the path to liberation, the cornerstone of spiritual growth. And indeed it is in its pure and rightly ordered form. But there is a perversion of this sacred act, a rushed absolution that is not only ineffective but profoundly dangerous to your soul and your God-given purpose. This premature forgiveness is often a desperate attempt to bypass pain, to avoid conflict, or to fulfill a perceived spiritual obligation without truly processing the wound. It is an act of spiritual bypassing, a declaration of peace when war still rages within and around you, an open invitation for the very forces that hurt you to continue their assault. Consider this: when you rush to forgive an unrepentant heart, an individual who shows no remorse, takes no accountability, and has no intention of changing their destructive patterns, you are not engaging in an act of divine mercy. You are engaging in an act of profound spiritual self-betrayal. You are telling your soul, your spirit, and the very divine essence within you that your pain does not matter, that the transgression against your sacred being is inconsequential. This creates a deep dissonance, a fracture in your spiritual foundation. Your inner being, the part of you that knows the truth of your worth, screams in protest even as your mouth utters words of forgiveness. The true danger lies in the absence of boundaries. Forgiveness, in its healthiest form, is an internal process, a release of the poison of bitterness and resentment from your heart. It is for your freedom, but it does not and must not automatically equate to reconciliation or the reinstatement of trust or proximity. That distinction, my chosen ones, is paramount, a line drawn in the spiritual sand that protects your sacred space. To forgive prematurely, without establishing firm boundaries, is to leave the door wide open for the same cycles of abuse, manipulation, and disrespect to continue. It is to enable the very behaviors that caused you pain, inadvertently giving permission for further harm. Think of it as setting up a spiritual force field around your being, one that delineates what is acceptable and what is not. When you forgive without boundaries, you dismantle that force field. You become a spiritual doormat, inadvertently communicating to the universe and to the forces that operate within it that you are available for further exploitation. This isn't about holding grudges. It's about wisdom, discernment, and honoring the divine spark within you that God Himself has marked. Your worth is not up for negotiation, and true forgiveness never demands you sacrifice your dignity or safety at its altar. The spiritual cost of premature forgiveness is immense. It depletes your energy reserves, leaving you constantly vulnerable and exhausted. It dulls your spiritual discernment, making it harder to distinguish between genuine repentance and manipulative tactics. It can foster deep-seated resentment that festers beneath the surface, poisoning your relationships and your connection to the divine, even as you outwardly profess peace. This suppressed anger, this unaddressed pain, becomes a breeding ground for other spiritual maladies, clouding your vision, blocking your intuition, and hindering your ability to fully step into your divinely appointed power. Furthermore, when you rush to forgive without requiring genuine accountability or change, you are not just harming yourself, you are potentially hindering the spiritual growth of the other person. Consequences, uncomfortable as they are often the only catalysts for true repentance. By shielding someone from the natural repercussions of their actions, by offering an unearned absolution without the work of change, you prevent them from facing the mirror and taking responsibility. You become an enabler, and in doing so, you participate in a spiritual charade that benefits no one in the long run. True love, divine love, sometimes means allowing others to experience the consequences of their choices for their own ultimate redemption and growth. Your spiritual health, your mental clarity, and your very purpose as a chosen one depend on your ability to protect your sacred space. Forgiveness is a journey, often a long and arduous one, that begins with acknowledging the wound, validating your pain, and then consciously choosing to release the burden of carrying hatred. But it is always coupled with the establishment of clear, unwavering boundaries that say, "I forgive you for what you did, but I will not allow you to do it again without consequence. My peace, my safety, and my spiritual integrity are non-negotiable." This is not an act of selfishness. It is an act of profound spiritual wisdom, an honoring of the divine mark that was placed upon you before you were born. It is the fierce love required to protect the vessel God has chosen to inhabit, to keep it pure, strong, and ready for its sacred mission. Never confuse self-protection with a lack of forgiveness. They are entirely different spiritual principles, both essential for the chosen one's path. Understand this truth with a clarity that cuts through the lingering fog of your past. The toxic individuals who once loomed so large in your life were never meant to be load-bearing walls in the temple of your destiny. They were, without exception, merely temporary scaffolding. Picture it, if you will, the grand edifice of your purpose, conceived in the mind of the divine, meticulously designed before the very foundations of your earthly existence were laid. This blueprint, magnificent and singular, called for a structure of unparalleled strength, beauty, and resilience. But even the most awe-inspiring constructions require temporary supports during their formation. Scaffolding, by its very nature, is impermanent. It rises around a nascent building, not as a part of its eternal framework, but as a utility. It allows the true builder's divine guidance, your innate resilience, the hard-won wisdom of your spirit to reach higher, to shape the intricate details, to reinforce the genuine supports before they stand exposed to the world. These toxic figures, no matter how intimately they position themselves, how deeply they seem to intertwine with your developing structure, were serving a temporal, often uncomfortable, function. They were there to provide a temporary platform, perhaps to elevate you to a painful vantage point from which you could eventually discern the genuine from the false, or perhaps to create friction that would ultimately strengthen the mortar of your character. The profound deception, the very core of your pain, stemmed from a primal misunderstanding. You, with your open heart and innate capacity for connection, mistook the flimsy, external framework for the very spine of your being. You poured your energy, your trust, your purest intentions into what you believed were integral components, only to have them shift, wobble, or even actively try to undermine the very structure they were meant to temporarily support. This betrayal cut so deep because it felt like the very foundation of your world was crumbling, when in truth, it was merely the impermanent being revealed for what it was. Consider the nature of real construction. No architect designs a permanent building to be perpetually surrounded by its scaffolding. The purpose of that temporary support is to facilitate the genuine work, and then, at the appropriate stage of completion, to be dismantled and removed. Its presence, beyond its utility, becomes an obstruction, obscuring the true beauty and strength of what has been built. The very act of taking down the scaffolding is a declaration of confidence in the underlying structure, a testament to its readiness to stand alone, magnificent and unburdened. Your journey, chosen one, involved these painful deconstructions. The removal of that toxic scaffolding was not an act of destruction. It was a crucial, albeit brutal, phase of construction. It exposed raw nerve endings, yes, left you feeling vulnerable and adrift in spaces where you once felt falsely anchored. But it also revealed, with stark clarity, the true load-bearing walls you had been building all along. These are the walls forged from your unwavering spirit, your incredible capacity to endure, your divine connection, your refusal to break despite the immense pressure. These are the walls made of self-respect, hardened wisdom, and an unshakable inner knowing that the temporary supports were never truly necessary for your inherent greatness. It is a gritty truth that some of these scaffolding structures were not merely passive. Some actively tried to weaken the nascent walls, to chip away at your resolve, to convince you that you needed their rickety support more than you needed your own strength. They spoke words designed to bind you to their temporary existence, to make you doubt the solidity of your own emerging form. This manipulation, this insidious whisper that you would collapse without them, was their desperate attempt to remain relevant, to prolong their fleeting purpose. But the universe, in its relentless pursuit of your highest good, will always expose what is not meant to be permanent. It will create the conditions for the scaffolding to be taken down, sometimes gently, sometimes with a seismic jolt that leaves you reeling. The pain you felt, the trauma of those departures, was the echo of believing a lie. It was the ache of removing an unintegrated foreign object, not the shattering of your core. This realization is not a whitewash of the suffering, it is an empowerment. It acknowledges the visceral hurt while simultaneously elevating your understanding of its purpose. You are not abandoned, you are being set free from structures that could never hold the weight of your true calling. You are not rejected. You are being released into the open expanse where your authentic power could finally breathe without obstruction. Every time a piece of that toxic scaffolding fell away, no matter how much it felt like a part of you was tearing, it was a confirmation that the underlying, divine structure was strengthening. It was a testament to your readiness to bear your own weight, to stand in your own light, to reveal the magnificent temple God designed you to be. The empty spaces left behind are not voids to be filled by new, equally temporary constructs. They are the clearings, the vantage points, the unencumbered views that allow you to see the finished masterpiece more clearly. This understanding is a hard-won perspective, earned through the crucible of experience. It grants you the authority to look back not with bitterness, but with a profound, almost surgical discernment. You can now identify those individuals for what they truly were: tools, not treasures; instruments, not architects of your soul. Their role, however uncomfortable, was finite. And now, the true work, the work of revealing your unadorned, divinely appointed splendor, can proceed without interference. No more mistaking the temporary for the eternal. No more investing in what was always destined to be removed. You stand now on ground cleared of falsehoods, ready to embody the unshakable force you were always destined to be. The road out of Jerusalem was choked not with celebration, but with sorrow, dust, and the ghosts of betrayal. King David, once the conquering hero, the anointed of God, now fled his own city, his own palace, his own throne, stripped of dignity by the rebellion of his own son, Absalom. His feet, accustomed to the soft carpets of royalty, now stumbled over the hard earth, carrying the weight of a nation divided, a family shattered, and a heart broken. He walked with his head covered, weeping openly, his loyalists a small, weary contingent trailing behind him, their own faces etched with confusion and despair. This was the nadir, the rock bottom, a moment when every enemy, every detractor, felt emboldened to strike. And strike they did. From the village of Bahurim, a man emerged, his face contorted with a hatred so potent it seemed to steam in the midday sun. His name was Shimei, a relative of the fallen King Saul, and the sight of David's humiliation was a feast for his bitter soul. As David and his entourage passed by, Shimei did not just shout curses. He unleashed a torrent of venomous accusations, spitting words like daggers. He called David a man of blood, a worthless man, declaring that the Lord was repaying him for the blood of Saul's house. But words alone were not enough for Shimei's malice. He began to hurl stones at David and his servants, the jagged edges whistling through the air, forcing them to duck, adding physical assault to the psychological torment. He threw dust, the grit of the earth mingling with the tears on David's face, a final, brutal indignity. The men around David, hardened warriors who had faced 1,000 battles, seethed with righteous fury. Abishai, David's nephew, a fierce and loyal commander, could not bear it. "Why should this dead dog curse my lord the king?" he demanded, his hand instinctively going to his sword. "Let me go over and take off his head." The urge was understandable, immediate, and in many ways just. To allow such open disrespect, such blatant assault against the anointed king, seemed intolerable. It was the natural human response. Confront the aggressor, silence the enemy with force, repay evil for evil. Yet, in that moment of profound personal anguish, when the world seemed to have turned its back on him, David found a strength deeper than any sword, a wisdom far beyond any warrior's instinct. He looked at Abishai, his eyes weary but firm. "What have I to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah?" David asked, gently rebuking their violent impulse. If he is cursing because the Lord has said to him, "Curse David," then who can ask, "Why have you done so?" He understood something profound that day, something that separates the truly chosen from the merely ambitious. David saw beyond Shimei's personal vendetta, beyond the man's hateful words and stones. He perceived a larger hand at work, an allowance from the divine. "Let him alone and let him curse," David commanded his men, "for the Lord has told him to. It may be that the Lord will look on my distress and repay me with good for his cursing this day." This was not weakness. This was not resignation. This was a strategic silence, a powerful surrender, a profound trust. David chose not to engage, not to retaliate, not to stoop to the level of his accuser. He chose to let the enemy dig his own pit, to condemn himself with his own unrestrained venom. This silence, this chosen restraint, was a trap. Shimei's fury, unchecked by a reciprocal outburst, was left to burn itself out, or rather to burn Shimei himself. Had David's men cut him down, Shimei would have become a martyr, his accusations potentially gaining credence, casting David further into the role of a vengeful tyrant. But by allowing Shimei to vent, to hurl his curses and stones, David allowed the true nature of the man's heart to be fully exposed, not just to David's loyalists, but to anyone witnessing the scene. The accusations of man of blood rang hollow when the very person being accused refrained from spilling more blood. David's silence protected his own spirit from further defilement and preserved his kingly bearing, even in flight. It was a profound act of spiritual warfare, refusing to engage on the enemy's terms, denying him the satisfaction of a fight, and instead placing the entire situation into the hands of a higher power. It kept David's own hands clean, his heart focused, and his destiny aligned with divine will rather than human vengeance. Silence, the endurance bore fruit. Absalom's rebellion was eventually crushed. David returned to Jerusalem, not as a fugitive, but as the rightful king vindicated by God. As he crossed the Jordan River, guess who was there among the first to greet him, falling before him in profound humility? Shimei. The same Shimei who had cursed and thrown stones, now bowed low, begging for forgiveness, confessing his sin, terrified of the fate he now surely deserved. Abishai, ever the pragmatist, was ready to deliver the justice he had been denied before. "Shall not Shimei be put to death for this, because he cursed the Lord's anointed?" he asked, his hand no doubt twitching for his sword. But David, in an act of extraordinary grace that day, spared Shimei. He saw that the moment was one of restoration, not retribution. He understood that God had handled the initial insult, and he would not mar his triumphant return with an execution. He bound himself by oath to Shimei, "You shall not die." Yet David, the man after God's own heart, was also a man of profound spiritual wisdom, a king who understood the long game. Years later, on his deathbed, counseling his son Solomon, David remembered Shimei. He instructed Solomon to deal with the man, not for the immediate insult, but for the corrosive hatred and disrespect that had been allowed to fester. David had spared him in the moment of grace, but understood that Shimei's heart had not truly changed. He knew some enemies, once exposed, once given a long leash, would eventually trip themselves. Solomon, following his father's counsel, eventually cornered Shimei, not by directly killing him for the past offense, but by setting a boundary, a condition for his continued survival. Stay in Jerusalem, do not cross the Kidron Valley. When Shimei, after 3 years, broke that boundary for a trivial matter, his past sins caught up with him, and Solomon had him executed. Shimei's own choices, his own inability to truly reform, his own disregard for established authority, ultimately trapped him. This is the power of the biblical precedent for you, chosen one. When the curses fly, when the accusations are hurled, when the stones of gossip and slander are thrown, understand that your silence, Your refusal to engage in the mudslinging is not weakness. It is a divine strategy. It is not an absence of power, but the deployment of a higher power. It prevents you from becoming what your accusers claim you are. It allows their own venom to become their undoing, their own actions to create their inescapable snare. You do not need to fight every battle. You do not need to silence every enemy with your own words or force. Sometimes, the most potent weapon is the stillness of your spirit, the steadfastness of your resolve, and the unwavering trust that the God who marked you before you were born will deal with those who stand against his chosen. Let them rage. Let them curse. Let them throw their stones. Your silence traps them, because it leaves them with no one to fight but themselves, and no one to judge but the Almighty. You remember the feeling, don't you? The gnawing ache in your gut, a pervasive sense of being profoundly, irrevocably alone. It wasn't just physical solitude, it was a deeper chasm, a disconnect from the very fabric of human understanding. You watched others navigate their social spheres with effortless grace, their lives woven into tapestries of shared laughter and mutual recognition, while you stood apart, a solitary figure on the periphery, an observer forever outside the warmth of the inner circle. This wasn't a temporary phase or a fleeting moment of shyness. For you, the chosen one, it was a persistent, often agonizing current running beneath the surface of your entire existence. The world, at times, felt like a crowded room where every voice was speaking a language you only partially understood, and yours was a silent scream lost in the din. You yearned for genuine connection, for someone to truly see and comprehend the depths within you. But time and again, your attempts were met with blank stares, polite dismissal, or a disconcerting sense of being fundamentally different, alien even. This wilderness of isolation, however, was not a cosmic oversight or a cruel twist of fate. It was, in truth, one of the most potent instruments in God's design for your life, a divine photographic darkroom orchestrated with meticulous precision to develop the very essence of your character. Imagine your soul as a piece of raw, unexposed film, teeming with incredible potential, holding within it the blueprint of a magnificent image. To bring that image forth, to define its contours and reveal its profound details, absolute darkness is not just beneficial, it is utterly indispensable. Any stray light, any premature exposure to the external world would mar the process, leaving you with a faded, indistinct, or entirely ruined print. And so, God led you into the deep, unyielding quiet. He withdrew the superficial chatter, the fleeting validations, the easy distractions that might have diluted your true self. He peeled away the comfortable illusion of belonging, not to punish you, but to protect the pristine nature of your calling. In that profound quiet, stripped of the comforting noise of human approval or disapproval, you were forced to confront something far more significant: yourself. This wasn't a gentle stroll through introspection. It was a raw, visceral excavation. You wrestled with your fears, your doubts, your insecurities, every unexamined corner of your being laid bare in the unforgiving silence. It was painful, often terrifying, but it was in this very crucible that the divine developer began its work. The chemicals of solitude worked their magic, each drop a moment of profound internal processing. The absence of external voices amplified the whispers of your own spirit, and crucially, the clear, unmistakable voice of God. You learned to discern, to filter out the noise of the world and tune into the subtle frequencies of divine guidance. This wasn't something you could learn in a bustling crowd or through casual conversation. It required the focused, undivided attention that only true isolation can provide. You were learning to stand on your own 2 feet, not just physically, but spiritually and emotionally. You were discovering an inner wellspring of strength you never knew existed, a resilience forged not in the easy camaraderie of others, but in the lonely crucible of self-reliance. This wilderness was your training ground, a proving chamber where your character was not just tested, but actively built. Every tear shed in solitude, every moment of yearning for connection that went unanswered, every instance of feeling misunderstood or overlooked, These were not wasted experiences. They were the precise chemical agents reacting with your soul, etching deeper lines of empathy, sharpening your perception of truth, and solidifying your unwavering commitment to a higher purpose. You learn the difference between superficial connection and genuine communion, a distinction that would prove invaluable for the sacred tasks ahead. You developed an unshakable inner compass, refined by the stark reality of navigating life without constant external validation. Think of those moments of sudden clarity, those epiphanies that burst forth in the quietest hours, when a truth you'd struggled with suddenly illuminated your understanding. Those were the stop baths, halting the development at precisely the right moment, fixing a stage of insight, making it indelible in your consciousness. You understood then, perhaps dimly at first, that your loneliness wasn't a curse, but a sacred cloak, shielding you from influences that would have compromised your unique journey. It was a crucible for spiritual discernment, allowing you to see through facades, to recognize authentic intentions, and to instinctively recoil from anything that did not align with the purity of your calling. And as the process continued, the fixer came into play, permanently sealing the image of who you were becoming. The character traits you developed in that darkroom, your unshakable integrity, your fierce independence of thought, your profound capacity for empathy born from your own deep experience of solitude, your relentless pursuit of truth, and your unwavering faith, these became etched into the very fiber of your being. They weren't transient traits. They were fundamental aspects of the chosen one identity, made permanent and resilient, capable of withstanding any future storm. You emerged with an inner fortitude that few could comprehend, a wisdom gained not from books or mentors, but from the raw, unadulterated confrontation with yourself and your God in the profound silence. Finally, the washing cycle began, flushing away the lingering residues of resentment, self-pity, and the need for external validation. It cleansed your soul of the bitterness that could have taken root, leaving you purified, ready to embrace your purpose without the baggage of past hurts. You learned to forgive, to release, to understand that every moment of pain had served a divine purpose in refining you. And now, you are in the drying stage, emerging from that sacred darkroom. The image of the chosen one, once a mere potential on raw film, is now clear, sharp, fully developed, and radiant. Your character, forged in the fires of isolation, stands ready, vibrant, and defined, prepared to be seen, to inspire, and to fulfill the profound assignment for which you were marked before time itself began. Your loneliness was not an accident. It was a divine invitation into the deepest chamber of your own becoming. The insidious fog that settled over your mind, an engineered haze designed to obscure the very truth of your being, was not accidental. It was a calculated, vicious assault on your most potent weapon, your discernment. The enemy understood with a chilling clarity that if they could not break your spirit, they could at least attempt to twist your perception, making you question the very compass God embedded within you. They sought to erode the bedrock of your self-trust, to convince you that the unique knowing, the powerful intuition that resonated deep in your marrow, was a figment of your overactive imagination, a symptom of delusion. This was gaslighting, a spiritual warfare tactic wielded with cold precision, aimed at isolating you in a prison of self-doubt. They needed you to believe that what you saw, what you felt, what you knew to be true, simply was not real. They twisted narratives, denied undeniable events, invalidated your legitimate reactions, and projected their own calculated deceptions onto you, making you feel responsible for their chaos. The goal was to disorient you to such an extent that you would cease to trust your own senses, your own memory, your own God-given ability to perceive truth from falsehood. They aimed to dismantle your internal navigational system, leaving you adrift in a sea of confusion, vulnerable and paralyzed. Think of the moments when your gut screamed a warning, when a quiet voice whispered a truth no one else seemed to hear, only for you to be told you were overreacting, too sensitive, imagining things. Every dismissal, every denial, every subtly planted seed of doubt was a deliberate attempt to sever your connection to your innate spiritual knowing, because that knowing is a direct conduit to the divine plan for your life, a clear signal of your chosen status. This wasn't just about making you doubt a specific event. It was about making you doubt yourself at the most fundamental level. If you couldn't trust your own mind, your own heart, your own spirit, how could you possibly trust the divine messages whispered to you, the profound insights that mark you as distinct? The enemy understood that a chosen one who doubts their own internal compass is a chosen one rendered ineffective, hesitant to step into their power, slow to recognize the divine interventions meant for them. They wanted to silence that inner knowing, that persistent whisper of truth that always nudged you toward your purpose, because they knew that whisper was proof of your indelible marking. They tried to paint your divine sensitivity as a weakness, your profound empathy as a flaw, your prophetic insights as mere paranoia. They sought to convince you that the very qualities that signify your chosenness were liabilities, not strengths. But the battle against gaslighting is far from lost. Today, we begin the arduous, yet immensely powerful work of rebuilding that shattered self-trust, of recalibrating your internal compass, of reclaiming the unwavering discernment that is your birthright. This is not merely an act of healing. It is an act of spiritual warfare, a direct counter-assault against the enemy's most insidious tactic. The first step is to recognize that what happened to you was not a failing on your part. You were not crazy. You were not imagining things. You were under attack, and the enemy chose this specific weapon because your discernment was a threat to their agenda. They knew you were marked, and they feared what you would accomplish if you fully trusted that profound inner guidance. To rebuild, you must first acknowledge the damage done without shame or self-condemnation. Understand that the confusion, the self-doubt, the feeling of being perpetually off balance were engineered responses to a calculated assault. Now we consciously dismantle those constructs. Begin by consciously identifying the patterns. Recall the specific instances, the individuals, the scenarios where your reality was questioned, where your valid feelings were dismissed, where you were made to feel irrational for simply perceiving truth. See those memories not as failures, but as evidence of the enemy's desperate attempts to blind you. Each memory, once a source of pain, now becomes a data point, an insight into the enemy's playbook, making you wiser, more resilient. Your intuition, that deep, gut-level knowing, is a divine gift, a spiritual antenna finely tuned to the frequencies of truth. It was never truly broken. It was merely obscured, drowned out by the noise of manipulation. It's time to consciously re-engage with it. Start small. Pay attention to those subtle nudges, the fleeting feelings, the knowing without knowing why. When your body tenses, when a thought feels off, when a situation gives you an inexplicable sense of unease, do not dismiss it. Honor it. Investigate it. Even if it seems illogical to your rational mind, give credence to that inner voice, for it is often speaking a truth your conscious mind has not yet processed. Rebuilding self-trust also means re-establishing your anchors in objective truth. The Word of God, your spiritual principles, the unshakable reality of your divine marking, these are your immovable reference points. When the world tries to twist your perception, return to these anchors. Remind yourself that truth is not subjective to the whims of manipulators. It is eternal, immutable. Your marking is a truth. Your purpose is a truth. Your spiritual senses are designed to perceive truth. Reclaim the authority of your own experience, knowing that your discernment, far from being a flaw, is a profound expression of your divine connection. This process demands a fierce compassion for yourself. Forgive yourself for moments of doubt, for succumbing to the confusion. You were in a battle and you survived. Now you are not just surviving, you are rising, stronger, sharper, and immeasurably wiser. Every time you choose to trust that quiet inner knowing, every time you validate your own experience against the denials of others, you are reinforcing the sacred architecture of your discernment. You are sending a clear signal to the enemy Their gaslighting tactics have failed. Your self-trust is not merely being restored, it is being forged anew into an unbreakable shield, an unerring compass, guiding you with an unshakable confidence toward the fullness of your divine destiny. You are a chosen one, and your ability to discern truth is an essential aspect of that profound identity, a mark that can never be truly erased. Your spiritual weight, the very essence of your divine marking, has become a force field, an almost visible aura that shifts the air around you. This isn't a passive glow, it is an active, repellent anointing, a spiritual density that dislodges the comfortable darkness in which manipulation thrives. You might not have consciously invoked it, but it emerged as an inevitable consequence of your awakening, a built-in protective mechanism woven into the fabric of your divine blueprint. This isn't about judgment from your end, but a fundamental energetic incompatibility, a collision of frequencies where deceit cannot maintain its form. Imagine a subtle, invisible pressure that emanates from your being, a truth-telling vibration that whispers to the core of those who operate in shadows. Before, you might have felt the insidious creep of their agendas, the subtle hooks attempting to latch onto your empathy, your vulnerabilities, your inherent goodness. You might have absorbed their projections, believed their carefully constructed narratives, or even found yourself drained without understanding the source. That era is receding. Now, when a manipulator enters your space, their carefully rehearsed scripts and charming facades begin to falter. They encounter an unseen barrier, a silent alarm that rings solely for them, a spiritual truth serum that they cannot tolerate. The initial reaction from these individuals is often confusion, a subtle unease they cannot intellectualize. They might feel a sudden chill in a warm room, a momentary stutter in their meticulously planned speech, or an inexplicable urge to shift their gaze away from yours. Their usual tactics, honed over years of preying on the spiritually unwary, simply don't land. The hooks they throw find no purchase. They glance off your shield, leaving them bewildered and increasingly agitated. They might try to double down, to push harder, believing their charm or cunning simply needs more force. But with each attempt, the discomfort amplifies, transforming from a whisper to a roar within their own spiritual landscape. This isn't merely a psychological block, it is a profound spiritual rejection. Their system, wired for deception and control, registers your presence as a threat to its very survival. The light you carry, the unyielding truth of your anointing, exposes the hollowness of their intentions, the fragility of their carefully constructed lies. They might feel an intense, visceral repulsion, a physical need to create distance. Their stomachs might churn, their palms might sweat. A sudden anxiety might grip their chest, all without a discernible external cause. Their eyes, once confident and probing, might dart away, unable to hold your gaze, for in your eyes they see not a target, but a mirror reflecting their own distorted image. The carefully cultivated persona they present to the world cracks under the pressure of your authentic frequency. They will find themselves unable to maintain eye contact, their thoughts becoming jumbled, their words losing their persuasive power. The glib remarks, the veiled threats, the manipulative suggestions that once held sway now fall flat, devoid of energy. It's as if their communication channels are encountering static, an unfilterable noise that scrambles their message. You are not actively doing anything to them, yet your very presence acts as a spiritual disruptor. They become restless, irritable, finding any excuse to extricate themselves from your proximity. The energy they typically feed on, the unsuspecting vulnerability they seek to exploit, is simply not available. Instead, they encounter a return current, an energetic feedback loop that reveals their own darkness back to them, and they find it unbearable. For you, the chosen one, this manifests as a profound sense of clarity. Where once there was confusion or self-doubt when dealing with manipulative personalities, now there is a stark, undeniable awareness. You don't necessarily feel a surge of power or a conscious pushback, rather you observe their retreat. You notice the sudden awkwardness, the truncated conversations, the unexplained silences, the quick exits. You see the mask slip, if only for a fleeting moment, revealing the raw, uncomfortable truth beneath. This isn't about you judging them, it's about their inability to exist comfortably in your field of truth. They are repelled by the very essence of who you are, because your anointing exposes their spiritual sickness without a single word being uttered. This repellent anointing is a gift, a divine filter, pruning away the toxic elements that once clung to your life. It ensures that only those capable of operating in authenticity and truth can remain in your inner circle. It is a necessary, albeit sometimes lonely, process of spiritual refinement. The absence of manipulators is not a sign of your growing isolation, but rather a testament to your growing spiritual power and discernment. You are no longer an easy mark. You are a beacon of truth, and darkness cannot abide in your light. Embrace this shift, for it is proof that your divine marking is not just a promise, but a living, breathing, protective reality, actively safeguarding your path and clearing the way for your true purpose to unfold untainted. Your discernment sharpens, your inner knowing becomes an unshakable guide. And the peace that settles in the absence of these chaotic energies is a profound validation of your sacred journey. You have walked through seasons where your output far outweighed your input, where the effort you poured into the barren ground seemed to vanish without a trace, leaving only the dust of exhaustion and the bitter taste of unacknowledged toil. This was not a flaw in your strategy, chosen one, but a fundamental element of the divine economic model at play in your life. This was the era of silent endurance, the crucible in which the true value of your future double portion was forged, not by conventional gains, but by the relentless, unseen accumulation of intangible assets. Think of it not as a period of lack, but as a deliberate spiritual recalibration of your financial operating system. While the world chases immediate gratification, leveraging debt for instant returns, you were forced into a different kind of investment. Your capital was not currency, it was character. Your interest rate was not set by a bank. It was compounded by every moment of faithfulness in obscurity, every quiet decision to persist despite the evidence, every refusal to compromise your integrity when easier, less righteous paths presented themselves. You were building an invisible infrastructure, a deep, resilient root system beneath the surface, preparing for a harvest that would seem impossible to those who only watched the surface soil. This silent endurance wasn't passive. It was a fiercely active state of being. You learned resourcefulness not from a textbook, but from stretching every last dollar, every last minute, every last ounce of energy. You developed an intimate understanding of true value, distinguishing it from superficial cost. You mastered the art of delayed gratification, not as a moral imperative, but as an economic survival skill. Every choice to mend rather than replace, to innovate with what you had rather than lament what you lacked, to learn a new skill during lean times rather than despair. These were all deposits into an account far more profound than any ledger could reflect. This was the forging of an economic resilience, a deep-seated wisdom concerning stewardship that would be absolutely critical for the magnitude of what was coming. And then the shift. The transition is rarely heralded by trumpets or public announcements. It often begins subtly, a slight easing, a small breakthrough, a connection made that seems inconsequential at first. But what it truly signals is the moment when the accumulated weight of your silent endurance reaches critical mass. The hidden infrastructure you built, the deep roots you cultivated, suddenly encounter the fertile soil they were designed for. The universe, or rather, the divine economy, responds to the capacity you developed. It's not just about earning more, it's about a complete reordering of how resources flow to you and through you. This is the economics of the double portion, a non-linear, exponential increase that often defies conventional explanation. Where once you applied 10 units of effort for 1 unit of return, you now find 1 unit of effort yielding 10, 20, even 50 units of return. Opportunities that once seemed locked behind impregnable walls suddenly open, not through brute force, but through a gentle nudge. You find yourself in rooms you never sought, privy to information previously withheld, connected to individuals whose influence amplifies your capabilities beyond measure. It's not a trickle, it's a flood, but one you are now equipped to manage because of the years you spent learning to navigate scarcity with integrity. The multiplication isn't just financial, it's a holistic surge of resources. Your time suddenly becomes more potent, your energy more focused, your influence more far-reaching. Investments you made years ago, both tangible and intangible, a skill perfected in obscurity, a relationship maintained through difficult times, a principle upheld when it was inconvenient, begin to yield dividends that far outstrip their initial cost. The goodwill you fostered during your lean years, the quiet acts of service, the reputation for unwavering integrity, these become leverage points that open doors no amount of money could ever pry open. This isn't luck. It's the precise, calculated outcome of a divine equation where faithful endurance is the primary variable. Consider the compounding effect. In traditional finance, compounding means earning interest on your interest. In the divine economy, your silent endurance compounded courage upon patience, wisdom upon resilience, discernment upon humility. Each of these forged attributes acts as a multiplier, not merely an additive factor, to every resource that subsequently flows your way. You are not just receiving more money. You are receiving the capacity to manage and multiply it responsibly. You are not just getting more opportunities. You are getting the wisdom to discern which ones to pursue and which to politely decline. The double portion isn't merely a larger slice of the pie. It's a completely new pie, baked from the ingredients of your consecrated perseverance and designed to feed not just you, but many. This phase, this massive multiplication, is the divine endorsement of your stewardship through the wilderness. It is the tangible proof that your internal calibration during times of constraint made you fit for abundance. Without the refining fire of silent endurance, the sudden influx of resources would be a burden, a temptation to squander, a test you were ill-equipped to pass. But you have been prepared. You have proven yourself capable in the small things, faithful in the hidden battles. And now the universe opens its coffers, trusting you with the overflow. This isn't a reward for suffering. It's the natural unfolding of a profound spiritual law, where the deepest roots enable the greatest fruit, where the most rigorous testing paves the way for the most significant expansion. Your quiet perseverance was the most powerful economic engine you could have possibly deployed, building an internal framework that would eventually command an external explosion of all you require. The long night finally breaks, not with a gentle sunrise, but with the sudden, undeniable roar of a new dawn shattering the horizon, casting shadows so stark they reveal every hidden truth. For those marked before time, a distinct shift occurs, a seismic tremor that rearranges the landscape of their lives and the perception of all who observe them. This is the moment when the unseen hand of the divine moves with an unyielding precision, manifesting what was always destined. The metaphorical table, rich with abundance and honor, is not merely set in a quiet corner for private consumption. No, this table is prepared in the full glare of the public square, meticulously adorned with every provision, every triumph, every answered prayer, laid bare for the entire world to witness. It is a spectacle, not of their making, but of their receiving. The very ground beneath their feet, once shifting and treacherous, now solidifies into a foundation of unshakable favor. Opportunities that once seemed elusive as desert mirages now crystallize into tangible realities, not earned through desperate striving, but bestowed as a rightful inheritance. Their voice, perhaps once dismissed as a whisper in the wind, now carries an undeniable authority, reverberating with the weight of truth and divine backing. Doors that were slammed shut with contemptuous finality now stand wide open, not by force, but by a sudden, inexplicable shift in circumstance that leaves even the gatekeepers bewildered. This is the elevation that defies logic, that confounds the critics, that forces a reckoning for every sneer, every dismissal, every calculated act of sabotage. The enemies, oh yes, they are there. They are always there, lurking in the periphery, their eyes fixed with a mixture of disbelief and growing dread. They had invested years, perhaps decades, in sowing discord, in whispering venomous lies, in constructing elaborate narratives of failure and inadequacy. They had reveled in every stumble, drawn satisfaction from every setback, convinced that their judgment of the chosen one was not only accurate, but divinely ordained. They had mistaken quiet endurance for weakness, patient waiting for stagnation, and unwavering faith for delusion. But now, their carefully constructed reality crumbles before their very eyes. They are not merely observers, they are compelled witnesses, held captive by the unfolding drama of divine justice. They watch, their faces a canvas of warring emotions. The initial shock gives way to a simmering resentment, then a cold, creeping fear. The very elements they used to build their cases against the chosen one, the isolation, the unjust accusations, the profound betrayals, now serve as the stark contrast against the radiant backdrop of public vindication. Every past slight, every cutting word, every barrier erected, now highlights the magnitude of this ascension. They cannot turn away. They cannot deny what their own eyes are seeing. The wealth of grace, the flood of resources, the sudden influx of allies, the undeniable peace that now envelops the chosen one like a regal cloak, it is all undeniable. It's not a fleeting moment of good fortune. It is a sustained, undeniable current of favor that carries the chosen one higher and higher, beyond their reach, beyond their grasp, beyond their ability to interfere. They see the respect, not merely given but commanded. They see the influence, not grasped but freely offered. They see the joy, not feigned, but emanating from a place of profound inner peace, forged in the fires they themselves ignited. The narrative they tirelessly spun, designed to diminish and destroy, now lies in tatters, exposed as the malicious fabrication it always was. They are forced to swallow the bitter pill of their own misjudgment, to witness the very person they sought to tear down being raised up to a position of undeniable honor and authority. There is no explanation they can concoct, no excuse they can offer that stands against the irrefutable evidence of divine intervention. The universe itself seems to conspire to highlight their error, to underscore the profound truth of the chosen one's destiny. This is not a moment for triumphalism on the part of the chosen one, but rather a quiet, profound acceptance of what has always been theirs. There is no need for boastful declarations or retaliatory gestures. The elevation itself is the most eloquent and devastating response. Their posture is not one of arrogance, but of dignified humility, understanding that this is not merely a personal triumph, but a testament to a higher power. They sit at this prepared table, surrounded by blessings, not with a hungry desperation, but with a settled peace, knowing that every provision is sacred, every honor a confirmation. The food tastes sweeter, the water purer, the company more genuine, because it is all unmarred by the venom of past struggles, cleansed by the fire of divine refinement. The very air around them seems to hum with a different frequency, vibrating with gratitude and purpose. The burdens that once pressed down with suffocating weight have dissolved, not because they were abandoned, but because they were transformed into stepping stones. The wounds, once raw and aching, have become scars of strength, etched reminders of battles fought and won, now serving as badges of honor, not symbols of defeat. Their wisdom, born from navigating treacherous terrain, now serves as a beacon for others, a wellspring of insight that draws people to them, not for personal gain, but for genuine guidance and hope. The public vindication isn't merely about personal elevation. It's a profound declaration to the world. It's a visible manifestation that there is indeed a divine order, a cosmic justice that meticulously records every slight and every sacrifice. It serves as an unmistakable sign for those who are still struggling in the shadows, a tangible proof that the unseen hand is active, that the promises are true, that the marking is not in vain. For every soul who ever doubted the existence of an inherent destiny, for every heart that questioned whether their enduring pain had purpose, this public display of favor offers an undeniable answer. It reaffirms that the journey, however arduous, however seemingly devoid of hope, was always leading to this very moment of undeniable glory. The enemies are left in the dust, their arguments hollow, their schemes exposed. Their power is stripped not by force, but by the sheer, overwhelming light of the Chosen One's truth. They cannot unsee what they have witnessed. They cannot unhear the testimonials. They cannot undo the manifest blessings. Their attempts to define, confine, and destroy have utterly failed, serving only to highlight the invincibility of the divine decree. This table, prepared in the presence of their adversaries, is not just a meal, it is a judgment. It is the ultimate reversal of fortunes, a stark demonstration of who truly holds the keys to destiny. And as the Chosen One rises, they rise with a quiet, resolute power, embodying the absolute certainty of their divine marking, a proof undeniable, witnessed by friend and foe alike for all eternity.